Okay, so our first dental materials assignment involves turning our pour of regular dental stone into a cube. And the cube, if you recall, according to our specs, it needs to be 40 by 40 by 40 millimeters in dimensions. Before you start, it's good to have a ruler handy, and also I got some colored pencils here, or a regular pencil is fine, and I'll show you how to use those when we start trimming. In regards to the model trimmer, this model trimmer here, if you can look at the disc here, it's a diamond disc. It cuts very, very effectively when you turn it on, and it's got an automatic water feed that is hooked up to the water. So when I turn on the main switch at the back, it's going to make quite a bit of noise, and it's going to feed water because we need to have water fed to the model trimmer, otherwise it's going to get all clogged up. We also have a splash shield here. Good idea to keep that fairly clean, and that'll prevent anything splashing towards you. Also, you'll also need some safety glasses. Okay, make sure you're always wearing safety glasses, and also be aware where your hands are on the model trimmer in relation to this disc, because this will not stop for you. It will cut your fingers if you're not careful. The other thing I want to mention, it's kind of irrelevant to you guys because the table here, it should be clean, but you can see here there's so much residue from previous models here that have been trimmed. This is seized. This needs a lot of work to loosen this nut and make this table adjustable. This table here, you can adjust it to different angles, up and down angles like so. But right now, it's kind of fixed in one position. And it's a good thing, actually, because this position now is relatively 90 degrees to the disc, which is what we want. We want 90-degree angles when we trim, at least for this project, and eventually when you're trimming just regular models. The pour up that I have here, you can clearly see I might run out of room trying to trim it. So I'll show you how to get it started and eventually how to make this fit in there so you can trim it. It's also a good idea to maybe wear a lab coat when you're doing this, because you're gonna get a lot of splashes coming here, and you're gonna have a lot of stone residue on your scrub. So wear a lab coat, and it's better if you wear it backwards. So just put your hands in the sleeves and wear it backwards. It'll cover you all the way up to your neck. So we're ready to start. I'm going to turn the model trimmer on, so it's going to make a little bit of noise. So this is the toggle switch back here, and when I turn it on, you'll see that over here there's water feed. You can see a little bit of water dripping there, and also over here we have the drain, water drain. Right now it's coming out clear, but when I start trimming the model, it's going to become a little bit milky in color. And we have a bit of a makeshift plaster trap here, and there's another plaster trap down there. So you don't want any of this stone residue to be going into the regular water main, okay? So I'm going to start, put my splash shield, and I'm going to start trimming it a little bit. And you can see here that I made a very flush cut. And I'm going to do it in all four sides, as if I'm kind of shaping the cube. Through here too. And maybe if we can get the camera to go over to the drain, you can see now as I'm trimming, the watercolor changes. Okay, from this point on, what's a good idea, because now I can possibly get this to go in there fully. Maybe not, I'll trim it some more. So look where I position my hands. I usually have my left hand on this side, just an anchor to the model trimmer, and then my right hand here, and my fingers just like so. But nowhere near am I close to that wheel. I'm back here somewhere. So I'll rotate it. And I'm using my fingertips to get a nice feel of what I'm doing. You get more tactile sense. I'm not using any gloves of any sort. And it looks like this is going to fit. And whenever you're trimming against the disc, you want to make sure that this is supported by the table here. You don't want to be going off the table. You want to be sitting on the table. Now that I've cut this down to size, if you notice the back side of this, it's kind of rough when we poured it. But now I have the opportunity to put it a little more upright and gently do that. And as I'm finishing it, I gently go left and right, because as the model trimmer spins, it'll give you lines as it spins. It'll give you little striations. But if you just go back and forth a little bit on the very end, it'll give you a smoother surface. Another thing you want to keep in mind when you're trimming, the diameter of the wheel here obviously is a lot bigger than it is here. So therefore, even though the motor is spinning at a certain RPM, the wheel out here turns a whole lot faster. So that means it'll cut more here than it will on the inside of the wheel. So when you're applying pressure, you have to be mindful of that. So you have to adjust for it by putting a little more pressure on this part of your project or a model that you're eventually going to be trimming versus this side. Okay. I'm going to continue now because I've got this down to size, and hopefully I poured enough height in this to give me that 40 millimeter that we require. Okay. So if I were to mark 40 millimeters with my ruler, you can see there's my 40 and 0 somewhere up here where my fingertip is. There's 40 and 0's here. So I think I have enough, but time will tell. So I'm going to start from one side. It really doesn't matter which side you start. Well, let's start on the one and hopefully we have enough. So nice and slow. If you push hard enough, you will trip out the model trimmer. I can push hard enough to trip this out and make it stop, or you'll trip a breaker, an electrical breaker. So if you hear the model trimmer slowing down, and I'll do it on purpose so you can hear it, like that, don't do that. That's a lot of pressure. So we're gonna go nice and easy. Gonna work it through. Notice I'm anchoring everything to the model trimmer. And then sometimes this gets a little sticky. So what you want to do is just wet it a little bit. So now it slides around a little bit easier. Let's see how we did here. So there's a big chunk trimmed off. And let's see if we're 40. I'm 40 at the middle, but I'm not 40 over here. So hopefully I'll have enough. Let's see. I think I need to keep going a little bit more. If I don't have enough, that means my pour up initially wasn't tall enough to accommodate the dimensions. So I might have to redo it again. But let's just see. Hopefully I won't have to. So I'm going to keep going. And that looks a whole lot thicker now. So let's pay attention to this now. This is the initial trim that I did here on the bottom when I flatten it. And because the table is set 90 degrees to the wheel, this angle here is 90 degrees. Right? You got a 90 degree angle here, which is very important. You always want to have 90 degree angles, not only for this project, but also for your model trimming when you're working with your patients. This next area that I'm going to trim is very important. So if we look at here, if we look on the model trimmer right here on the table, just gonna wet a little bit so you guys can see. You got some lines. You got this line here, and there's some more parallel lines on the side. So if I want this surface now to be 90 degrees to this, like this is to that, all I gotta do is take the last surface that I trimmed and line it up with this line here. You can see it? That line right here. I'm gonna line it up right here. And then I'm gonna put pressure against the wheel, regardless which part of my project touches first. I'm gonna stay true to this line. And I'm going to adjust it there. You can see it clearly. As you're working through it, you can see I'm off, I can be off, but at some point when I get real close, I gotta be really close to that line. So I'm gonna keep on trimming. I'm gonna stop there, I'm not gonna go all the way through, but you can clearly see now that the new surface, if we can just put it up against the bench here, just to see against the background, the new surface is 90 degrees to the one before. And I know this is 90 degrees to the one before that, so everything becomes relative. And the more surfaces you trim, the more complex this becomes, okay? All right, so if I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna take my ruler, see if I have enough height here. I think I do. So I'm going to continue. So with my pencil, so now it gets really, really confusing. This is surface 1, surface 2, surface 3. So you don't go back and trim the same surface, at least not right now. So if I work around this way with my camera, now I'm going to trim this side in relation to surface 3. And once again, I'm going to line it up with this little line right here. So it's parallel, so it's not deviating one way or another. So it's parallel to that line. You can almost put it right on that line. And I'm going to push in towards this. Keep in mind that this part of the wheel spins slower than that part of the wheel because of the diameter. So therefore, consciously I have to make an effort now of putting more pressure here than here to offset that. But now I do have my line to guide me, so it makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to pull that out. So now it's starting to look like a square. And visibly, these lines now look parallel to this. These lines look parallel to each other. And this is 90 degrees to those two. So looks pretty good. Just going to soak it a little bit. And now I'm going to label this new trimmed side number 4. And now I'm going to trim this side. And I'm just going to keep either side, this side here. I am right-handed, so I'm going to stay to the left of the block. So it's obscuring this line here, so be careful when you do this. Do not go very close to that with your fingers, okay? I think I purposely left this a little bigger than 40 millimeters. Let's see. But it's starting to look like a square. It's starting to look like a cube. Let's see how wide this one is. Ooh, that was, by chance, it's exactly 40 millimeters. That was not intentional at all. That was just pure luck. And this side, this is 42 millimeters. So I got lucky here, because if this had been 38, 37, I hope you can all agree the most obvious thing to do is to re-pour the block and make it a lot bigger and taller. Okay? But I got lucky here. Maybe I had a good sense of 40 millimeters. Okay. So therefore, I'm going to trim this side 2 millimeters. So therefore, instead of guessing now, I'm going to trim it 2 millimeters. Put my ruler there. And trim it to that. Trim that much off. Which is not a lot. So I need to trim this back. To there. So therefore, this side is going to be trimmed off. So I'm going to go in this way. 2 millimeters. If you're not sure what 2 millimeters looks like, go very slow and measure. So this is the side I trimmed off. Let's see what I have now. I got 40. I got 40. Right? And it looks like a square. It looks like all sides are right angles to each other. I'm keeping this one. This does not change now. So anything that I'm going to do is going to be rotating around this side. So now let's see up here. It looks like I have enough here. 40. Yes. Maybe. Ooh. Cutting it close. Cutting it close. We'll see. Cutting it close. And then here, for sure, we got 40. Here, 40, yes. But the one side I'm concerned with is right there. But let's just see. It looks like this side is a little bit off. This is my good side. So therefore, this is my good side. This does not look 90 degrees to that. So I'm going to place my good side here. And then really concentrate on keeping it on that line. There, without touching too much on the bottom. I trimmed off a little bit. And that's 40. So that looks a little more 90 degrees. This does not look 90 degrees. So I'm going to trim that back a little bit. That looks more like parallel now. That does not. So I'm going to push it in that way. If you're really lucky, you'll use a model trimmer that is exactly 90 degrees. The table is 90 degrees to the wheel. I don't think this one is. This one is probably closer to like 88 or 87, and that's why I'm having this little deviation. Regardless, I'm going now to cut this side to size, and hopefully I have enough height here. I have enough height to accommodate 40 millimeters and give me a nice cube. Let's see. I'm going to pick the shortest side and put that on top. And let's go in and trim. I'm going to stop there. It doesn't look like 90 degrees. And that's because I don't think this table is 90 degrees to that trimmer. But regardless, that's a little more than 40. That's it. That's okay. So let's check this one off. This one's okay. And let's call it this face number 1. Looks good. Let's look at number 2. This is 40. This looks a little shorter, definitely. So now I'm down to 38. I'm down to 38 millimeters this way. So, although it looks good, it's not at the right dimension. So what we have to do in order to correct this is actually do another pour up with a much higher pour inside our bowls to give us enough width to start trimming the sides. So ideally what you want to do, you want to get your cube looking like a cube, and I'm going to get this to look like a cube as much as I can, even though the model trimmer is not exactly square. Just eyeballing it now. I know it's going to be a lot less than 40 millimeters at some areas, but just to prove a point. Okay, if we look at this now, let me just turn this off. On the table, at a glance, it looks pretty good. It looks like a happy looking cube, right? It's sitting flat on the table. All the vertical surfaces here, they look like they're perpendicular to the table. This part of the top surface, it looks like it's parallel. Whichever side I put it down, right? The problem is, just gonna wipe this dry a little bit with a paper towel. When I take my ruler and start measuring, this one is 39 millimeters. This one is 40. That one's okay. If I look at this one here, that one's 38. This one's 38. So you get the idea. They're not exactly 40. At a glance, it looks pretty even, but it's not. So what I recommend you guys to do is, if you get into this trouble, you have to pour another block of stone, make it a whole lot higher now, a whole lot higher than when I had it before, or you had it before, to give yourself some forgiveness. So when you get to being very close or proximal to the dimensions, you want this cube to be bigger, closer to like 43, 44 millimeters, to allow you some room to cut one way or another. If you go to the model trimmer, just gonna stop the model trimmer there, to allow you to trim this a little bit more, to make that adjustment so all sides are still relative to each other, but still be 40 millimeters. Okay? I'm gonna do another one off camera and we'll compare the before and after. So I'm gonna leave this as it is now, but I'm going to trim a cube that's absolutely 40 by 40 by 40 and everything is square, and then we'll compare the two and you'll see the difference. Even though this looks good, it's not exactly perfect. All right, so good luck with yours, and we'll see you guys in class and do a comparison between the two.